Hello, everybody. I am NS, nerdSlayer. Don't worry, I'm still nerdSlayer, okay? I'm tired of people saying that I'm not nerdSlayer now. I'm still nerdSlayer, okay? Still have the fedora. I'm still playing video games. It's just that we went for a little bit of a rebranding of sorts, okay? So we went with NS because it fits more with someone who likes to tip their fedora. And frankly speaking, it just looks better with acronyms and detectives and all that stuff. I mean, I think you guys understand that already. But all right, so on this episode, this is episode 29. On this episode for this week, we will be talking about Star Wars a lot. We will be talking about the Jedi Fallen Order, of course, because they had a reveal trailer. They had a bunch of information. For example, it's not going to have microtransactions. It's not going to be a multiplayer title. It's using the Unreal Engine and not the Frostbite. We'll go over all of that. We'll also go over, there's been some more details revealed about Telltale. Apparently, Kevin Bruner, the co-owner, kind of one of the guys that I sort of painted as being maybe a big part of the blame, came out and kind of said some things about why the company failed, and I wanted to analyze those because I figure if I can follow the stories that we've already covered before, at least, I can kind of keep updating you guys maybe what the progress is. Those particular stories. Also, we will talk about BioWare apparently actually had an all-hands meeting, according to Jason Schreier, about all this recent drama with the whole employer stuff and being overworked and Anthem being a big mess and all of that stuff. So we'll talk about that. We will also go into a little bit about, there's been some more information, thank you Lions for posting this, about Halo and the Halo Insider information for those who are trying to test out the new Master Chief Collection that's going to have Halo Reach, and that's the one that's coming out first. So I think we will all be testing Halo Reach, I guess. I wonder if that means campaign too, but I don't know. They might just be multiplayer flights. Anyway, in the later segment on the show, we will talk about MMOs on the MMO On The Go segment, of course. And we will talk about Bless is probably going to be shut down. So Bless Online, one of our favorite MMOs ever. Cue the audience laughter. Is going to be shutting down apparently soon is the rumor. So we'll see that, what that entails, I guess. And then Lost Ark apparently is working on a mobile version, but also trying to upgrade to Unreal Engine 4 for its Western launch. So people are thinking that means that maybe the Western launch will be more so delayed, which people have been looking forward to that game as like some kind of ARPG sort of MMO that's, you know, kind of woefully underrepresented right now, I guess I would say. And then we will talk about Albion Online going free to play, sort of how the reviews have been for that game, to see if maybe it's a game that's going on the up or going on the downward spiral. And then, of course, there's a funny story that we can go over about a lobbyist, apparently, a real-life lobbyist being banned permanently for some nefarious activities in none other than the game EVE Online. And that's been a funny story circulating around. Card showed me that one. And yeah, anyway, so also we will talk about Classic WoW because we have officially announced that we will be doing a Classic WoW guild for the Horde. All right, these orc females up in here, but yeah, we will talk about that too and sort of what that entails and what the content on my channel will look like because of that. Because obviously, if I'm making it a community affair, it's going to be something that I'm probably going to end up making some sort of content, at least streaming at the bare minimum. But I'm sort of thinking how to tackle doing my own kind of take on WoW videos, seeing what's kind of underrepresented right now and maybe where my lane is, I guess you would say, in that respect. Yeah, I think that's a good way. Anyway, how's everybody doing? I had to get through my seemingly really, really long intro, but how is everybody doing? It is Monday, the 15th of April. Thank you for resubbing, Lions. Wow, it's been 7 months. I appreciate it. And then, yeah, hello, everybody. Full of Dark, Card, Lions, Isman, Grammys, Zila. Yeah, Anbu. The gang is all here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into some of the juicy information about the upcoming Star Wars game that's being developed by none other than Respawn of Apex Legends and Titanfall, as well as, I think, was Respawn the one that did the campaign in the most recent Star Wars Battlefront 2, I believe? Was that Respawn? Can't remember off the top of my head. By the way, I can't really like play the volume because these dudes will flag my video for nothing. Even if it was like 5 seconds of a video. I had someone actually contest one of my podcast videos because of 5 seconds I played of like some stupid like meme. And I was like, what? Anyway, so clearly they're showing off their main actor, who's none other than the actor for Joker in the Gotham TV series, and he's going to be apparently the main Jedi in this story, and it clearly looks like he's some sort of like average Joe at first, and that's kind of what they're painting the story out to be. But obviously, as the trailer goes to hint, he actually might be Force sensitive, and that would make him sort of one of the last like Force sensitives to, and you would have to rebuild the Jedi Order is sort of like what the plot is supposed to be aiming for. And some people think that it kind of could have like maybe like a Kyle Katarn vibe, where it's like, you know, he's not a traditional Jedi because he's having to learn without actually really being taught, which is like, don't get me wrong, Kyle Katarn was taught by Luke for sure. He was definitely taught by Luke, but he also taught himself a lot as well because he was a Force sensitive before he was a Jedi for some time. He became a Jedi later in life, and this kind of seems like it could be something like that because, I mean, the kid doesn't look like he's super young here, right? He doesn't look like he's like 15. I don't know, what do you guys think? It looks like 16, 17. Point being that whenever you're a Force sensitive and it takes, sorry, I'm a massive Star Wars nerd if you guys didn't know this. But if you're a certain age and you haven't really acted on your powers yet, they become kind of like very hard to manage because they're sort of like not being like properly kept, if you want. So like, I don't know, it could be like a Kyle Katarn kind of thing, but people are saying that it could have a similar vibe just because it's been said to be a third-person action game. Actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. A third-person action adventure game. And I love the Jedi Outcast series. I love the Jedi Knight series, and I love Jedi Outcast, and I love Jedi Academy. Those are great games. So if it can be anything close to that, and I mean, Unreal Engine could get us there, I don't know. That could be a really fun game, even if it is just single player, which has already been confirmed, as you see here. We're doing it live, right? Respawn's Jedi Fallen Order will have no multiplayer, no microtransactions, and also confirmed by Vince Zampella at Star Wars Celebration. I guess they'll be showing off the game, I'm assuming, is what that means. Story-focused game. So people have been speculating, what is story-focused gonna mean in this case? Like, does that mean like a 6-hour like campaign? Am I gonna pay basically $10 for every hour that I get out of the game? Or am I going to end up, I don't know, maybe they're going for a 10, maybe like a traditional back in the early, I would say early 2000s, late 90s, kind of more like 16 to 25 hour games. That was kind of like the range you would see a lot of. I don't know. I think for me personally, I don't really care if it's really long per se. I think people are kind of a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit anal retentive about that. It doesn't need to be super long for me, but it needs to be like, needs to feel like it's fulfilled. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours doesn't typically make me feel like it's fulfilled enough, especially if it's like a complex story, and that's the kind of story that I typically gravitate towards. I would have to assume it would have to, at least for me, be, again, this is just throwing this out of my ass, but maybe like a 12-hour game, maybe, you know, something like that would be like kind of more fair to me, like something that would seem like it could actually play out and I could feel fulfilled after playing, because I've played some games around those before. But I don't know, we'll see. We have no idea, obviously. It's obviously been also confirmed that there's been some serious focus on narrative for this game. So people don't know if that means it's going to be narrative within a short period of time, sort of like the traditional EA model at this point, or maybe they might be going for something a little bit more complex. But it was confirmed, of course, that they're having a big narrative focus. They've got 6 They're really gonna make me turn off ad block on stream. You did me dirty, VG247. You did me dirty. All right, so they're obviously, for those who don't know, sorry, I don't mean to keep saying obviously, because I don't know how many of you have followed the story or how many haven't, but Chris Avellone was announced on the project. If you don't know already, sorry, okay? That's why I said obviously, because I figured that people would know that part already, but if you didn't know, then he's obviously one of the biggest writers being put on the project. But apparently there's like 6 narrative designers, which people are speculating like that seems like too many cooks in the kitchen. But I don't really think it's like a case of that, because 6 narrative designers, some people speculate that narrative designers are not really the same as like a traditional writer. It's more like somebody who's trying to set a scene, maybe like world build and maybe kind of work on pacing and how to tie characters in. It's something more like a supportive role in writing. It's not really like the traditional I'm the main writer sort of thing. So I know people were memeing about this on Reddit, and you guys know me. I like to troll the Reddits. That's what I was looking at, and I was just like, huh. I mean, people have brought up some pretty good points here, I think. I'm definitely like at first glance seeing 6 narrative designers, it does sound a little bit, I guess scary to think like, oh, that seems like too many creatives in this room. But if they're all there to support, a lead writer, in this case, somebody who's been a story lead writer and designer for, over a decade and has created some of the best games ever and some of my favorite games. And oh, by the way, is going to be on the show next week. So next week, we're actually going to be starting the show a little bit later. And in fact, let me pull up that exact information right now so I can tell you guys correctly. But I'm going to confirm it here for everybody who's watching that it's been confirmed that I will have Chris Avellone on the show next week on Monday. It's going to be 2 p.m. Eastern. So that for my EU fans, I guess. Let's see, 2 p.m. Eastern. I start at, so that's 12, 2 hours ahead. Yeah, 2 hours ahead. Whatever time I normally start, it would be 2 hours ahead. But I'll make an announcement before, so it's not going to be late or nobody's going to get late. Nobody's going to be late to the party. Don't worry. I will make sure to actually properly set this one up in terms of like letting people know about it. That way, they can't miss it, because I think it's going to be really, really awesome. And unfortunately, I know people are going to be like, what about Jedi Fallen Order? Why don't you ask him about that? I am not allowed to ask him about Jedi Fallen Order. I'm not allowed to ask him about Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. So we can talk about other things surrounding that, he said, and we can talk about anything else, but we can't talk about those things. So he's not going to let us know the deep inner details about those games, because obviously they're still under a big cloud right now. They've got an NDA, I'm sure, like legion of NDA, and lots of protection over the IP and the story, and kind of keeping it hush hush because it's so early on. So yeah, we're not going to get anything about that. Can I ask about Dying Light 2? No, I cannot. That's funny that you asked that, because I just looked at the email right now, and I was like, oh, no. I see 222. He's like, Dying Light 2, Bloodlines 2, Jedi Fallen Order. But we can talk about Star Wars, and that's what we're going to be talking about, because I want his thoughts really on kind of like the current landscape when it comes to Star Wars. I really wonder kind of what's his opinion on how maybe. I'm not going to ask him any leading questions, that's for sure. But just kind of what's his idea about current Star Wars games and kind of where he thinks that they could improve, and maybe also hear his opinion on the previous Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines game. That'd be pretty interesting to hear, I think. Is there anything else I need to tell you guys about that has come out about Jedi Fallen Order? Let's see. No, I think that's about it. I mean, I think it's exciting to see that it's going to be using the Unreal Engine. I guess we can talk about that. And that's probably pretty cool. And going to be pretty cool, I should say, because like the thing with Frostbite is it's not a bad engine. I just feel like it's not an engine that's like easily adaptable, and it's clearly shown that in cases. And Unreal has been more of an engine, first off, that's existed way longer, but also it's been an engine that, frankly speaking, has been kind of able to scale on different platforms better and many different genres. And so people are actually excited that it's not Frostbite because they're thinking, okay, maybe it won't have like similar engines to, say, for example, what just recently came out and didn't do so well with the Frostbite? Anthem. And I don't think the newest Battlefront or Battlefield is that particularly bad with the. But I know people made a bunch of memes. Maybe I just have an improper representation of it. It's a little bit skewed. Sometimes memes can do that to you. So yeah. So the next topic that I wanted to go over is Kevin Bruner, who, if you guys followed my story about Telltale Games, my Death of a Game video on the company that recently folded, unfortunately, and a bunch of people were let go. There's been some recent news where apparently he spoke out to Game Informer about sort of like maybe some of the behind the scenes, and I wanted to kind of analyze it since we covered the story, obviously, and I figured why not, keep continuing to cover the story. At least it feels like I have that desire. So it's not a really big quote here, but here's his statement. Kevin Bruner, of course, for those who didn't follow the story originally, go watch that video. That's one of our favorite videos, okay? The Telltale video is really, really well done, and I really like doing studio videos. It's just like the only downside is those don't do as well, like popularity-wise, because people respond better to big popular IPs instead of like companies per se. Past a certain point, once you get huge, then yeah, you become like the company and not just the game or the IP. But anyway. So Kevin Bruner was the guy that was the co-owner, co-founder, I can say it right here, co-founder. And then he became a CEO when the other CEO got voted out by the board. And so Kevin Bruner was kind of like described as a guy who was a bulldozer, who was just like, give me what I want, who wanted to take credit for the two particular writers, and I cannot remember their top of my head, but they wrote Walking Dead season 1, and then they also went on to write Firewatch. And so San Campos, I think is their company name, or something Campos. Anyway, Kevin Bruner was kind of described in multiple testimonies as being a guy who sort of like was a bulldozer and was trying to take credit for things. And so he ended up becoming the CEO, which was kind of very ominous, of course, because this was a guy that even before that point already had kind of like a shady work history with the company. So anyway, so I'm just providing the context for this statement. As Telltale got bigger and more focused on mega hit type things, basically The Walking Dead was a double-edged sword. Of course, The Walking Dead game, for those who don't remember, is the game that actually is their most successfully selling game that Telltale made. And I think it's still, to this day, their best-selling game. It basically propelled them into like stardom, really, as a company. After that, they started picking up big IPs left and right. We made a really great game, but there's a lot of external factors that influence what's going on to be game of the year in any particular year, like what games are out there, obvious, and the environment that the game is going into. So there was a lot of pressure to duplicate The Walking Dead success-wise again from a business requirements point of view. Business requirements. Huh. I think that's like a weird way to put it. Sorry, the fedora makes me extra skeptical, but that one's like, wondering about that one. From a business requirements point, just sounds like a very like ominous, or maybe he's still under NDA or something. We tried to temper those expectations as best as we could, but it was still like, this is what we need the company to do. We needed to go out and find bigger games, just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and that kind of squeezed out opportunities for Poker Night at the inventory and Borderlands and weird stuff like that. Huh. Strange. Let's dig some more. trying to look for maybe some more clues. Maybe the story's not done. I'm just kidding. Sorry for those who are watching or listening right now on SoundCloud. You're probably like, "What the heck? I can't see any of this." I'm digging right now, guys. Okay, I'm digging through this interview that he did. There.
Thanks. But you've got the wrong guy.
Hey, thank you for the subscription, Corn. Appreciate it. Why does your name always sound familiar? Oh, are you one of the people that applied to the guild? Huh. Maybe. Okay. So he's talking about costs being an issue because the studio got big and they scaled up super big, which was a reason that we outlined on our channel in our video on Telltale. So it always feels good whenever I see somebody kind of confirm one of my sort of hypothesis, or in this case sort of assertions, that maybe this is a big reason that the game failed, or in this case the studio failed. But I think this one was a little bit more obvious. When you scale up really quickly and you're not getting that same return, and not to mention you have to pay to have licenses. You don't just get access to The Walking Dead. You don't just get access to Guardians of the Galaxy. You have to pay fees to get that. So not only do you have to do well, you have to do really well. Because if you don't do well enough, then pay for the development, but you also have to pay for the licensing. So even if they gave you a deal, like in some cases they might say like, oh, we'll give you this amount of money, and then anything past that, you just pay us back on the cost that we put into you. Some companies do that, publishers and stuff like that, but Telltale didn't really go to publishers. They preferred to self-fund. And so whenever you're a self-funding company, you don't have as much security if you're just relying on the next project. And that's sort of what they did, right? Telltale was kind of in this position where they were like an independent contractor. They were a company, basically, because they had this proprietary engine that was like, you know, I want to say like air quotes, like working, because it kind of worked, it kind of didn't sometimes, but you know, they had this engine and they're trying to sort of kind of create this production line where they can create more games like that, right? But at the same time, it kind of became like very structured, and things started to seem like they kind of didn't matter. The choice didn't matter. Things were kind of carbon copies of other games. It was just another IP slapped upon it, and yeah. So it's just it's one of those things where it's like, when you're one of those sorts of companies that has to rely on your next paycheck, essentially, your next project in this case, then you're one of those companies that as soon as like business isn't good, maybe you get dropped by one of your contracts, which is what happened in the case of Telltale. Just like boom, you fold like overnight. It's and that's basically what happened, right? It's a shame because we'll never get to see the second Wolf Among Us, and I really, really, really enjoyed that game. It was a good game. I liked the atmosphere. I was very skeptical of the atmosphere, but I really enjoyed it myself, and it's a shame we won't get to see that game. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything. Oh, here we go. Why do you think it was handled so poorly? Says, okay, here's a juicy part. If you could do it all over again, what would you do differently? Wow. Apparently, they said that they were actually talking about transitioning to Unreal. We couldn't afford to hire a separate team to develop it. Unreal is this awesome thing, and I'm a big fan of it. The big studio is a beast that needs to be fed. The studio kept getting bigger and bigger. It reduced the amount of risk we could tolerate, and the expectations kept getting higher and higher for what we could achieve. In hindsight, I would slow all of that down. In foresight, I do think that what I'm doing now with the narrative engine that I'm creating is just like focus on the super important stuff to make experience, which to me is writing. Huh. Oh, so here he goes. He took credit for creating the proprietary engine. So I don't know if it was him, but wouldn't it fit the story if he was the type of developer to take credit for something? But who knows? That's just speculation. Don't shoot the detective in this case. Okay, let's talk about something else, right? And I don't know. What do you guys think? Actually, let's talk about Schreier. So Schreier's been all over the place with his recent coverage of BioWare and sort of how the whole Anthem, the Frostbite engine, the production practices, people working insane crunch, people quitting left and right because they can't keep up with the workload. He basically put out this expose really about the whole company and the development behind Anthem. And so I figured we can Shri farming them clicks. So here's another one that he recently put out. Apparently, it was confirmed due to his sources that BioWare had held a long all-hands meeting for staff on Wednesday to talk about various issues raised both internally and in Kotaku's reporting, production practices, Frostbite, etc. A couple of people I've talked to are optimistic about changes. Others are far more skeptical. So this is very just intriguing to watch unfold for me because, I mean, frankly speaking, it's sort of those the situation where it's like BioWare is damned if they don't because he has a source or sources within the company and they know about this. And so they're just reporting it to him over and over again. And so BioWare knows that he has quote unquote moles, right? He's got information on the inside. So they're sort of forced over time. They didn't realize it at first, but now they're realizing it, I think, that they're sort of forced to take action because if they don't, then it's just more and more bad publicity, more and more bad publicity. And I know that it's possible that EA would kill BioWare for sure. Thank you, AKH925, for the sub. I appreciate it. That's been 3 months now. Also for Jarcorn, I missed the let tip for you, my dude. Who else did I miss? Oh, Lions, I think I might have given you one, but I'll give you another one, dude. Thank you. They need a scapegoat. Yeah, it could be that. It could be like maybe they're just trying to figure out how to take the negative press. But I like to think at least a little bit optimistically that maybe some of this hooperin' and hollerin' and hootin' and whatever else adjective or verb that you can think of that describes angry pitchforks. But it worked this time. You know, it really did work. That story blew up about Anthem. And it made BioWare kind of put out this like tongue-in-cheek sort of like, oh, you're beneath us response. But then after that, I mean, Jason didn't stop. He knew that he had done something right? Because whenever you're doing like an investigation, because I don't want to talk too much about journalism. Journalism ain't my field, right? I like to investigate. The thing about when you do an investigation, it's all about finding that person who seems like they don't want you to keep asking questions, right? And that person usually knows something, right? Because they don't want you to keep asking questions. And so in this case, you know, they didn't want Jason to keep asking questions, but by displaying that so like basically overtly, so he could see it that it had bothered them, and he knew that he was onto something. he smelled that opportunity probably, and I think that could work. I can shit talk him about being a mainstream journalist who sort of acts like he's one of the gamers, but he does good work as well. Should recognize him for that at least. Okay. No problem, guys. No problem. Alrighty, so the last topic for the current news segment that I wanted to go over, I had a couple people send me this. There's been some insider information about the Halo Reach, or Halo MCC, which is going to have Reach on it. Flight system, which is sort of like their beta testing, if you will. I don't even know if it's even beta yet exactly. They don't really say what it says. Oh, it's not even a beta version. It says it right here. There's been some more information about this, and of course I'm covering this because we plan on having a community in Halo as well, which we will talk about my later announced community, or actually recently announced community, sorry, of WoW Classic, the We Only PvE boys, which are a Horde guild, but we'll talk about that later on the MMOs on the Go segment. for right now, we'll talk about the Halo community, and as soon as we get more information and when it becomes playable, then we can actually start organizing events, and we can have some weekly tournaments and just fun things like that where we can all play, because Halo is one of those games that's really accessible to many different people. Sorry. You can do capture the flag, you can do big team battles, you can do things that don't really require to be so competitive, but we can also have like the little competitive tournament, the 4v4s if we want, you know, and then basically just give away free merch is how I would probably end up doing it. And in WoW Classic, I'm not sure how we're gonna handle giving away free merch. I might not just do free merch. I might instead do like hooking people up with like the guild bank money, you know, if like they're like doing well or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out, but just trying to think of ways to kind of spread the wealth, if you will. But also get my name out there more and play some more video games. Like, I love Halo. I love PvP focused games. And really just like me, what I would describe as like a virtual world feel in an MMO. WoW Classic, I never got the chance to experience that first. You know, I was too busy playing Star Wars Galaxies, and then I went and played Warhammer Online. And by the time I came and played WoW, besides playing on private servers, you know, every now and then on TBC and stuff like that, by the time I played, which was like Wrath of the Lich King, near the end of the Wrath of the Lich King, right at the beginning of Cataclysm, the game was just so drastically different. And I'm getting sidetracked, but let's talk about Halo right now. So the recent information that was released was about the insider stuff. Here they're confirming that it's indeed been added. The campaign portion has been added to the Master Chief Collection. Of course, for those who haven't followed the Master Chief Collection, of course, because many of you are PC fans and don't really have consoles, well, it's coming to PC. It was just announced, I think last month, I believe. And now it's also been announced that they're going to also introduce Halo Reach. And Halo Reach, of course, wasn't initially involved, or actually Halo Reach and ODST, Halo 3 ODST, weren't originally in the Master Chief Collection. But now that they're coming to PC, of course, they wanted to bring all of their games in. And now they're also bringing in campaigns, which is cool because now the PC audience gets access to all of the Halo games, campaigns for those who never got the chance to experience it. And then you also have access to all of the multiplayers, except that the way that they're doing it is they're doing it in different games, and they're doing it based on the timeline. So it goes Halo Reach, Halo CE, Combat Evolved, Halo 1, Halo 2, the Halo Anniversary Edition that they have, which is like the HD remake or whatever. Then there's Halo 3, then it's Halo 3 ODST, and then finally, of course, Halo 4. So of course, it's also going to be separated that way in multiplayer as well. So the first Halo game that we're going to get the chance to play is going to be Halo Reach. Right now, they're saying that hopefully by the end of this month, which is April, they're hoping to invite people to join the Halo Reach alpha testing. Let's just call it flight. It says if you hope to flight with us. That sounds funny. Anyway, the criteria, they said, is based on like maybe trying to target certain hardware, certain markets, bunch of different things, but that ultimately speaking, if you do get invited, that the people who play more have more of a chance to get invited again, because they basically know that you're going to be a good tester. So that kind of incentivizes people wanting to test really well because they want to keep playing. Because for the competitive people, it's an advantage to play the game on PC before other people. And then, of course, for the more kind of casual audience, they just get the chance to experience Halo that they haven't got the chance to experience yet before basically anybody else does, while also getting the chance to kind of be a part of it. So this will be cool to watch unfold, and I will, of course, report as soon as we hear anything about whenever they plan on inviting players. And hopefully I get invited. Hopefully some of us get invited, because it would be pretty cool to test that. And that means that with each community, I'm trying to put communities in different games or kind of franchises that I think that are sort of what I would say, not only just fun, of course, fun is a big part of it, but ones that I can really like personally get involved with. And Halo is one of those, of course. It's basically most of my childhood. And I love that they're coming to PC. I've been wanting a long time since I played Halo CE on the PC, where I used to mod my assault rifle to shoot rocket launchers. which was always, you know, funny to mess around with modding in that game. But also just because like I want to then branch out to doing some more content in that kind of world, if you will. So I don't know how I will approach the Halo world now in terms of like making videos, but I'm sure I'll think of something, and the same thing applies to classic WoW. I will talk about right about now, actually. So let me go ahead and move to the MMOs on the Go segment. We've talked about some interesting topics already in the current gaming news that I decided to dig into, and now we will talk about, of course, everybody's favorite thing. I hope, if you follow me. Just kidding. If you don't, it doesn't have to be your favorite if you follow me, but it also kind of does. Just kidding. We will talk about MMOs, and well, what other to talk about first than the, of course, announcement 2 years back now, technically 1 year back now, of WoW Classic being a real thing. Apparently, people thought that they did, and they really did. And what's that video called? We got to go watch that video. Let's build the whole story here. Let's pull out the rubber bands, pull out the pins, get the board up on the back. And I want one, by the way. I want one back here somewhere where I can just like put pins on it and then have my little rubber bands. It could look pretty cool. Like it'd be really cool for this. Oh yeah, did you guys see this thing back here? Sorry, let me move my mic. For those who are watching, I'm showing them the silver play button. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Thank you, I should say. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't have got that. So that, yeah, I didn't even show that off, so I'm doing a bad job of that. But thank you to everybody who's listening. And man, it's been like, it feels like a long ride, but it's been so short, you know, everything has gone so quickly. So man. Let's see if we can find that Q&A. Anybody know if you have a link to this? Maybe quick post Game of Thrones spoilers. Okay. Anybody know where this is? Or what the name of the video is? I know you guys have seen it. Thank you, Anbu. You're the best.
Have you ever thought about adding servers for previous expansions as they were then?
No. And by the way, you don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't. Remember when you had to like spam cities and say need a tank, need a tank, need a tank during the Burning Crusade days? You don't remember that because now you just push a button that says go to the dungeon. You don't want to do that.
Man, the arrogance.
Remember that?
The arrogance of what he said, that like he just had this sort of look about him where he was just like, you're just a little dirty casual. Like, you're just a dirty casual. You're just, you know, like, you think you want like a difficult game, but you don't know what you. It's just, it's crazy how we went from being here to now, you know, of course, WoW Classic being announced. And many people speculate that it was announced early, and basically because they couldn't announce Diablo yet, or a big announcement yet, they needed to fill this void. And again, this is speculation, so please don't hang the detective here. But they needed to announce something to get people excited because they didn't want to have a bad BlizzCon. And so WoW Classic was announced way before it was even, they even had an idea of what they were supposed to be doing, with how they were going to kind of go about doing it. And so I think that that's pretty much confirmed based on how they're handling it currently. If you look at how they're handling it currently, they basically have a stance where it's like, if you're in a situation where you want to play WoW Classic, all you know is that it's coming in the summer. Summer 2019 is what they say. Summer 2019. And they only just recently, as in like a few months, released what the content plan was for the game. In fact, this PvP content plan for how they're going to handle Classic, what patch the game's going to be launched in. Because if it's Classic, is it 1.1? Is it 1.2? Is it 1.8? Like, what, you know, what version of Classic is it? Because there's a range, obviously, up until the 2.0 PBC. And so this was kind of like the first time we really saw that they're going to do 1.12, which is, you know, a particular version that has the battlegrounds in it, of course, Alterac Valley, Warsong Gulch, and then I think isn't there one other one that there's? No, I can't remember anyway. So let's scroll down here, and for those who can't watch right now, Phase 1 is going to be WoW Classic launch. Right now, there's no confirmed date, but they're saying that the game should be launching in the summer. And then Phase 2 is supposed to be when they actually include an honor system and PvP rank rewards. So at first phase, the game's not even going to have PvP ranking. You're just going to be able to kill each other. If you play on a PvP server, I should say. Or you flag on a PvE server. Then Phase 3 is supposed to be the Alterac Valley 1.12 version, Warsong Gulch. Phase 4 is Arathi Basin. That's the other one. I could not remember it. Phase 6 is World of PvP Objectives, Silithus, and Eastern Plaguelands. And that this was kind of like released pretty like recently. And then the raid launch was just released last month, in fact. They said Phase 1 Classic launch is going to have Molten Core, Onyxia, Maradon. Phase 2 is going to have Dire Maw, Azuragos, and Kazakh. Phase 3 is Blackwing Lair, which is, you know, of course, a very famous one. Dark Moon Fair, Dark Moon deck drops begin. Phase 4 is Zul'Gurub, Green Dragons, and then the name that I could never pronounce, and I still can't pronounce, Anchorage, I think is how you pronounce it. Anchorage. And then Phase 6, of course, is like the one that basically people never really got to in the first place, was Naxxramas, and then the Scourge Invasion. So these content maps, I guess you would call them, classic content plan. You have PvE plan, PvP plan being released kind of basically 2 years after they announced the game. Maybe not 2 years completely, more like a year and a half. It seems like everything is kind of being done last second, and I think this is because potentially maybe they're realizing last second that maybe this is a very, you know, profitable venture to have classic servers, because that could attract a new audience, particularly the audience who's getting fed up with kind of how games have gone currently, which everything is a lot more lobby based. I mean, World of Warcraft from, you know, 1.0 to 2.8, I believe, was about being a World of Warcraft, right? But many people speculate, and including me, based on looking at patch notes. You know, I think that if you look at like what major patches changed the game, you look at 2.8 on from that point, and I think it gets pretty much like simplified, almost like patch by patch, the game does. And Wrath of Lich King, of course, adds a lot of this raid finder, dungeon finder sort of stuff, and that really changes the way that the game was played. And so current WoW, and I've played it in Cataclysm, end of Wrath of Lich King, and then I recently played, of course, I made a video about it in Battle for Azeroth. And, you know, I just couldn't help but feel like the game felt so lifeless. It didn't feel like I was playing World of Warcraft anymore. It felt like I was just playing like Lobby of Warcraft. And I know that that's perfectly fine for some people, but me personally, I'm a little bit tired of that. You know, many games are like that, and they all kind of copy each other in different ways. And it's sort of like, you know, at this point, I don't really want to play a game that I don't feel like community is the central aspect of it. And that's what has people really excited about WoW Classic ultimately, is because it's the situation where you, for those who didn't get to experience it back then, like me, I didn't get to experience WoW Classic launch. I was too busy playing Star Wars Galaxies, and, you know, I couldn't afford to use a credit card or something to pay for a subscription fee. So I would just use 60-day time cards, Star Wars Galaxies instead. And I never ended up coming over and trying it because I liked Star Wars Galaxies so much. But maybe if I didn't like it, I would have went and tried to play WoW at the time. But it's weird to think about these different paths and how you could have maybe become a YouTuber who did WoW content if you just played WoW at the time, you know. And instead I chose the losing game. No, I'm just kidding. I chose Star Wars Galaxies, and of course we all know its story at this point. I feel like it's had one of the craziest stories in MMO history. But yeah, it's been exciting to kind of see a lot of like the topics being brought to the table in regards to classic WoW. So, you know, a big one of that is people talk about the idea of, you know what, I don't think that Classic WoW is really going to do that well. I mean, many people kind of brought up that point that they think that it's just a fad. Maybe that guy was right, the developer who said that you think you do, but you don't. You know, people are going to get tired of it. People are going to complain when it's too difficult. People are going to dislike having to have ammo and these other things and et cetera, et cetera. I think that a lot of that speculation is a bit silly. And the reason why I think that is that WoW Classic as an idea isn't a maybe. It's a proven commodity. It's a very proven, successful commodity. And it still, to this day, is a proven, successful commodity. Put it this way, if WoW Classic was a thing that Blizzard did a number of years back, they would have had innumerable amounts of success because of it. And the you know, basically the point, the checkmate answer really is just look at like games like Nostarius and Molten Core and Molten WoW, Molten WoW, and what are some of the other ones? Elysium, Nox. What was the other one called? The Nox something. I used to play on private servers a lot because I couldn't afford a sub, and so I would play on WoW private servers in TBC. And Chronos is another big one, apparently. Molten WoW. Yeah, I remember Molten WoW for sure, Lions. That's why. Nostarius. Thank you, Jazz Pirate. I appreciate that. Or Jazz Pirate. Sorry. I appreciate that. Nostarius. And so it's already a proven commodity that even years after Classic launch and years after TBC and years after Wrath of the Lich King, people still want to play Classic WoW. So the answer, or question rather, is why is that? What is so unique about this game that people want to come back to it? And I'm going to do a video at some point, maybe in the next month, on the topic of sort of why we should care, maybe as outsider fans who didn't play at the time. Like, why should WoW non-Classic fans care about why WoW Classic is significant in the space of the MMO market? And I mean, I can just tell you guys right now, just a condensed thoughts version, that it's important because it proves really that people are indeed interested, commercially speaking, and I mean on a large scale, of having an old school style game again that focuses on community. And for the longest time, and look, I was in the trenches fighting against this rhetoric. And I remember people would always hit me with it was like a sucker punch, but it worked. They'd hit me with yeah, but like, it's not working because people don't care about it, so it doesn't make money. And then you're just like, well, how do I make an argument against that? It's not doing well right now commercially. And so unless I can get some sort of census or like survey done, I can't prove to this guy that it could work, right? Unless some game can make it work. Well, now, you know, you have history of private servers doing it, but even official WoW Classic announcements have made people take off months of their work in the summer. They don't even know what month the game's going to come out in, and people are just shooting like blindly. Like, they just want a chance to play the game again. And I think that that's pretty interesting. And instead of just looking at it from afar and being like, interesting, I figured, like, to me, this seems like the perfect opportunity to dive right in and get to experience WoW, frankly speaking, back in a point that I enjoyed it more so, which was TBC, but also in this case, get to experience it as Classic, which I never got to experience. So it's cool because it's like nostalgia in a way, but it's also like I get to see what, predated what version of WoW I got to play. And so there's a lot of really cool mechanics, and I've done a lot of research into it, and I'm continuing to do research because WoW Classic, let it be known, it is a difficult game. It is a game that requires you to work with other players. You must find a guild or at least a group of buddies that you guys can work together with, because this game, unless you play particular classes or particular combinations, it's even brutal just to level up in. Even the journey from level 1 to level 60 is difficult for some people. Depending on how fast you play, you're talking 100 hours or so, right? And so even just like playing through the game, it's difficult. And that's what I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but that's what I missed about SWTOR, guys. In Star Wars The Old Republic, whenever I brought it up in my video that they drastically changed the game right before they went into open beta, I'm not making it up. I will say right now, and people are going to think I'm crazy, but original SWTOR used to actually be as difficult as like classic WoW is. It was pretty damn difficult as a game. Now, I'm not going to say it was like completely equal. Maybe it was more like a 60-40 kind of thing, WoW being 60% more difficult, 40%. But then unfortunately, you know, they got cold feet and kind of changed that all, and then they made the game basically really, really, really easy, which is... Anyway, so back to WoW. With WoW Classic, it's sort of like this experiment, really, this big experiment. It's like an anthropology experiment. You get to see sort of like, is this old style of community really what people want? And I personally believe, yes, I do believe that. And I think that there's enough evidence to kind of show that off. Like people, my fedora is fighting me there. But there's people who have, you know, pointed this out before, but you look at different MMOs and which ones have been successful, and there's a big population of people who do miss the way that things were done before, who do miss when things had consequence, who do miss whenever classes couldn't do everything, who do miss when classes had more so identities and weren't like MOBA copies, right? Like there's many people who brought these points up before, and I think that it's now becoming more commonplace. Excuse me. And that's why it's been important to see WoW Classic unfold, because we don't know, of course, what month it's going to launch, but hype around the game has been crazy. I mean, the amount of YouTube videos that I've been watching and seeing that are doing really good numbers, and also just hearing the own kind of like, really just like from you guys, like from the viewers, like hearing you guys talk about how you're so excited for it is kind of what got me more excited for it. And so recently I've been theory crafting like my brains out. So I decided that, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity to do a guild community and play an MMO, because that's always been a dream of mine, really, is whenever I made a YouTube channel, I wanted to be able to go to like a game and also create like a community surrounding that game. The hard thing about that, though, was that MMO wise, I didn't really find any games that kind of resonated with me. And I tried different ones and I forced it a couple of times, you know, Legends of Arya, I forced that. I tried that. I forced Darkfall. I tried a couple of things and they didn't really work. In the case of WoW Classic, it's a proven commodity that's already worked, and it still works on private servers. And not to mention, it's one that people are way more familiar with, and it's one that's probably going to have a lot more mass appeal and wide mainstream appeal. So it feels like it's kind of like a perfect storm, really, for an MMO YouTuber such as myself. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm only ever going to do MMOs. Of course, I've covered multiplayer games and single-player studios, but it just means that why not take an opportunity to have fun in a MMO as a MMO YouTuber with my MMO-based community? So I am announcing now, for those who don't already know, I'm going to be playing WoW Classic, and we will be branding ourselves We Only PvE, which is our, of course, joke name. And for people who don't know the origin of this story, We Only PvE is a guild name that I invented on a PvP only game, and it was a full loot PvP game. And so I would either name myself Only PvE as a character name, or I would name my guild We Only PvE. And so it was always this repeated meme that would always crack people up, because they'd be like, what? I just got killed by a guy named Only PvE? Or like, this guild named We Only PvE just ganked us? And so that game, or that guild, has a little bit of like meme quality to it, but it also has a little bit of history. And I figured that if you're going to play WoW Classic, in my opinion, you have to play a PvP server, because otherwise, what is the point? You're going back to the source of the war, of the rivalry between these people, the factions, the Horde, the Alliance, the Orcs, you know, versus the humans, the Elves, the Tauren, it just goes on and on. The Undead, the Forsaken, the Forsaken. To me, it's a no-brainer to try a PvP server. The unfortunate thing is that if I could choose, guys, I would choose an RP PvP server, but it's unfortunately been already confirmed that the servers that are said to be at launch are going to be RP, which is PvE rule sets, a PvP server, which is, of course, a PvP rule set, and a PvE server, which is a PvE rule set. So the problem here is that they just basically alienated a complete big portion of their audience right off the bat by saying there's not going to be PvP servers. Sort of like their reasoning could be, oh, they weren't in there by that patch. And sure, that could be very well true, and I believe it actually is true. But in this case, it seems silly that you have this huge audience who wants to play an RP PvP server, and there's been polls on this. We're talking thousands of people, like 10,000 people. I think I saw the last, or no, 18,000 was the last poll I saw. People really want an RP PvP server, and at least having one RP PvP centralized server or something like that, or just one Eastern server, whatever they end up doing, seems like a no-brainer. But I guess they're maybe not so interested in that, or maybe they didn't think it'd be as, because they said it would be too niche. Ion, one of the lead developers on WoW, said that it would be too niche, and I don't really believe that. I really don't believe that. And for you guys who are maybe just PvP fans or PvE fans, you're wondering why our PvP is the server that I believe is, frankly speaking, the best server type in a MMO. It's simple. Our PvP typically requires that people can't name themselves X Legolas 123 X Legolas. So they typically have some sort of naming policy, and this is not consistent for every game, but most games have some sort of naming policy. So characters actually have to have kind of realistic names, or more so realistic names, and so that allows for more sort of like immersion in the case of like how people act. A common misconception is that an RPVP server is just like PvP, when in reality, it's a server that even non-PvP fans go to, because RP portion of it makes it have a deeper kind of more community-centric feel, and the PvP part is just fun whenever you're doing it with RP involved as well. So it sort of becomes this thing that people realize, including like RP fans. And by the way, guys, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I was a role player first, okay? I played Habbo Hotel as a kid in Guild Wars 1. Like, sure, I PvP'd in Guild Wars 1, but like, to me, it didn't really feel like PvP in that game, in the sense of like, it was very competitive. It felt sort of like different. It felt like I was PvEing, really, because like the game just felt sort of different. But like, I was very much an RP fan. In Galaxies, Star Wars Galaxies, I RP'd most of my days, right? I was an RP boy. So I don't like when people just unfairly characterize me because my name's nerdSlayer as being a PvP only guy, or just because I talk about PvP games or liking PvP in my games, it means that I'm only PvP. In fact, RP is one of the things that I enjoy. The reason why I like RPVP combined is because whenever you combine the PvP with an actual purpose, which in the case of RP, that's what RP provides. It provides a purpose. So now the Horde and Alliance are actually warring against each other. They're having different skirmishes. They're fighting over resources. You can create more narratives and more stories, and so it typically attracts a more mature sort of audience. But even if you don't like to RP, you'll enjoy the server because it has more of like a community feel, but it also has a lot more organized kind of PvP rating, because that's going to be a lot more common whenever you're actually role-playing, right? That's sort of like the idea of why RPVP is sort of, in my opinion, the best sort of server type, because it makes the most sense if we want to be honest. Like, let's think about it. Why does a PvE server really make sense? It doesn't. Like, why would I need a flag to go to war with someone that I'm already at war with? Like, I don't know. Sorry, I realize I'm like the PvP lord, edgelord, so maybe people think I'm just being insensitive here, but it doesn't make sense to me. Like, I wouldn't play a game like Classic WoW if I was going to play a game that wouldn't allow me to PK anybody, because it just seems like, well, I kind of want the enemy faction to be able to attack me. That actually makes it more exciting, because it's more realistic, because now the enemy faction is actually at war with me. So okay, anyway, so for those who are interested in joining, there's this link, and this is all located in my Discord. You can go to Classic Wowza and click the pinned images, as I'm doing here, and go down here and click the document. But basically, I'll give you guys a little bit of Spark Notes here, so we don't have to whole thing. I'm not going to read everything that I put here. But basically, we are a Horde guild. Currently, we have about 20-something people or so. Let's see. Last time I checked, it was 25 responses. So currently we have 25 people that have applied to the guild. And it's open enrollment to get into the guild. But the way that I've done it, and I think that this is kind of genius. No, I'm just kidding. But put it this way, you screw up a lot of guilds growing up, and then you realize that you got to do things certain ways. It's open enrollment to join the guild, but if you want to join one of the particular teams, like a PvP team or the raid team, you actually have to be able to show up at whatever allotted time for that particular team. And you also have to be at least, active. And when I mean active, I mean at least, 15 hours at a bare minimum. You have to at least be that active. And that's how I'm kind of counterbalancing it. That way everybody can join in on the guild, everybody can contribute, everyone can make money, everyone can craft and enjoy the benefits of having a guild crafter and all of that sort of stuff, and also just a guild in general to protect you if you're being PK'd or whatever else. But also, of course, having a team, if you will, where it can be a little bit more try hard for those who are interested in. Yeah. So we actually do want to raid. It's a thing that's going to be a long-term process, though, because what many people aren't familiar with classic WoW is that the raiding in itself just takes a long time to get through, even just to get geared to do the next kind of raids. It's a long slog, and you have to do it basically in this case with completely new players that I don't really know. I mean, I know some of you guys, but I don't know all of you guys, so I don't know if any of you are going to stand in the flames or get caught by some roaming mobs or whatever else. So it could be a long slog, but I think we'll get through it. And as we slowly kind of weed out the players who don't really want to like put in the time and effort, then it'll become easier and easier. And then we'll also still have the opportunity to bring the quote unquote lesser geared players, lesser skilled players along for the ride once we get better at doing it too. Eastern NA is sort of the server that we're going for. It's going to be an Eastern NA PvP server. If it can be, it will be an Eastern RPvP server, but that might not be an option, so it's probably going to be an Eastern NA PvP server. And for my EU fans and EU really homies that want to play classic WoW with us, I realize that many of you are looking at that and you're like, I don't want to play on an NA server. But trust me, I played Darkfall, which is a Twitch-based MMO physics engine, which requires you to hit pixel perfect if you're using a hit scan ability like a Ray or particular melee weapons. Put it this way. That game is the most reliant on ping, and I used to play that game with 130, 150 ping, okay? If you play on an Eastern NA server and you are in Western/Central kind of Europe area, you will at least get a bare minimum of 110 ping for sure, like 100 to 110 ping. But a maximum, you're talking like 150. So that's not terribly bad. 150 might seem bad if you play Twitch shooters or play Darkfall like I did. But in this case, it's not going to make a huge difference because there's still a certain amount of delay in the game anyway because of GCDs. And not to mention, there's not a whole lot of scenarios in the game besides maybe kicks and particular CCs every now and then where you need to be pixel perfect immediately right on cue. So MMOs, in the case like classic WoW especially, it's a lot more about that holy trinity. It's a lot more about focus fire. It's a lot more about using your abilities properly, controlling the battlefield, having the right knowledge of matchups, knowing cooldowns and things like that. It's not really Twitch based, so it's like ping doesn't really matter as much. That's my argument for not having my EU players not want to play with us. we need bangers at night and in the mornings, okay? We need people willing to put some alliance heads on a spike at all times throughout the day, right? That's the we only PvE guarantee. We're just doing it to protect our own kind, right? Loktar Ongar. Just move to NA so you won't have a ban EU players. Knowing people and knowing them as players can be quite different. Oh, I'm well aware of that, and that's why, as I've said to you guys, it won't be complicated to join the clan. But if you want to join a PvP clan, or sorry, the PvP team or the raid team, you're going to be judged on performance, and that's just inherently how it goes. Now, depending on which PvP team you join, like maybe we have an A, B, C, T, D team or whatever, whichever one you join doesn't mean that you're like a D level player. It just means that maybe that's the group that you fit better with. Or in the case of like the top two groups are probably going to be the most tryhard. Like my group, I'll just put it this way. My 5-man party, because there's 5-man parties in the game, my 5-man party is going to be heavy bangers, all right? What we call in MMOs the heavy bangers. The people who are, going after that Grand Marshal grind. The people who communicate well. The people who know how to play as a team, who focus fire properly. And that's going to be super elitist. I won't make that, I'll put that very bluntly, put it that way. that one will be super elitist. But that's because, you know, we have a certain standard, right? We need at least like the person in my position who's named nerdSlayer to at least be having some sort of standard in how he wants to go about eradicating the Alliance scum. But it's also because you want to play with people who match your sort of play style and also just desires. And it's like, I don't want to be caught in a situation where I'm PvPing in a small group of players where I feel like they don't give a shit, and maybe I do. And so it's sort of like, put it this way. Each group will be designed into 5 mans. Of course, that's how it typically is, because a 5-man group. So there will be 8 different groups, and these 8 different groups will be arranged based on classes, based on preferences, based on skill, based on availableness, etc. Because a 40-man raid, of course, is possible in WoW, as most people know, because that's like the big thing. So 40-man PvP is very possible. But it's just it's more realistic to split big groups into small groups, because you need a shot caller for each group, you need a healer for each group, you need a peeler for each group, or a tank or a support role, you need a main assist or a DPS focus, etc., etc. Anyway, just explaining to you guys kind of my thought process when it comes to playing MMOs, and really sorry, I didn't mean to do that. When it comes to WoW Classic, how I'm going to approach it, I'm going to have a main character and an alt character. My main character, I will kind of like level at a moderate pace, you know, not really trying to like no life rush it. But PvP wise, I will be rushing for sure. I will be trying to get as many PvP kills as I can, because I want to level up whenever that stuff comes out, and also just get better at the game because I'm playing a hunter, a huntard, woohoo, yay. I love classes that have a lot of control and are difficult to play. And also, frankly speaking, in my opinion, hunters make really, really good raid leaders and make really, really good PvP leaders, because they're far enough away that they can kind of like oversee everything and kind of make calls and whatever else. And they have a lot of control. They can feign death. They can put traps. They can heal. They have, of course, a lot of mobility, which is useful when you're being a leader and things like that. Anyway, just explaining my preferences, because people are going to think, oh, you picked Hunter because it's easy in PvE. No. That's not why. I mean, that's just an added bonus. I chose it for PvP, but if you want more information about the guild, just go check out the Discord. You can also apply here. I'll put it in the chat. I want that Grand Marshal rank. I want that Grand Marshal rank. I do. I want that rank, okay? Because I always heard good things about that rank when I was younger. People always said, oh, you're only a real banger if you get the Grand Marshal Classic WoW rank. And I'd be like, man, damn, I wish I could have played Classic WoW. Maybe I could have tried to get that rank. But now's the time, all right? Now is the time. All right, there's a lot of other MMO stuff that we'll talk about, so I won't waste anybody or waste any more time talking about that. But yeah, if any of you guys are interested, watching now, watching live, or gonna watch later on YouTube, or watching on SoundCloud, wherever you're watching this or listening to it, just go ahead and hit up the Discord, go to the WoW section, and there's all the information that you need there. If you need help picking a class, that's my specialty, okay? I actually, it's a weird like thing to flex on, but I really, really like helping people figure out what class they like to play. It's like this weird like pleasure I've always had, because I would always get my friends to play MMOs with me. And so they'd be like, what class should I play? I don't know, like, and I'd be like, what kind of class do you like? What kind of play style do you like? Do you like the burst? Do you like tank? Do you like to survive? Do you heal? Like, I don't know. I've always liked doing that. It's like a weird thing. Sort of goes with like the whole theory crafting. I love theory crafting in MMOs, because especially a game like WoW Classic and Galaxies, those are games that you have to really theory craft in. You got to get things right, because you don't want to make mistakes, because they could be costly, because everything costs money in the game. What did someone say in chat? Grand Marshal equal account sharing back in vanilla. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me that people did that back in the day. For me, it's just more of like I enjoy PvPing, and I want to enjoy making PvP content for the guild, so I'm probably going to get it just naturally by doing that, because a lot of us are blood hungry or bloodthirsty, bloodthirsty, meat hungry horde fanatics who are just ready to sink our teeth in axes and whatever type of weapon you've got. Every weapon's a hunter weapon, so I've got them all into the Alliance scum. But let's talk about some more MMO topics now. As I mentioned at the top, there has been some recent news regarding Bless Online. And Bless Online, of course, came out just recently. I think last year, in the end of the year, rather. And NeoWiz, the studio behind it, apparently has been dissolved and merged with their parent company. Many people are believing that this is a good shot, or it means that they're going to be, I guess, maybe potentially selling the game or getting rid of the game. But it's sort of, it's been teased as, I guess you would say, a point of evidence that maybe there's more behind the story. Maybe they actually will be shutting down the game. But sometimes companies do this, where they sometimes they will kind of dissolve companies and merge them with other companies when they're trying to rebrand, or maybe they do it whenever they're trying to launch another version of the game, which they've Bless Online's tried to do. But in this case, it could also just be a thing they're trying to kind of quietly shut the game down to not make a big like fuss about it, because NeoWiz does publish other games. But I just thought it was worth pointing out, because you guys know that I made a video on why Bless Online was a mess online, and it's put it this way, it's not very surprising that the game doesn't seem like it's going to be really lasting very long, because you can't launch as a completely different game than you advertised and then basically pull the wool over everybody's eyes and try and have console ports launch as well. It just, I think it pissed people off. But it was sad to see that they still held a number of population for, probably a couple of months, maybe even 6 months. And it's just like, that's a little bit annoying to me, because I feel like a lot of those fans just, at the end of the day, they just only care about their enjoyment. And I get that, as a consumer, you want to care about your enjoyment first and foremost. But the problem is when you support companies like NeoWiz, and in this case, Bless Online, who's failed as an IP or, MMO title 4 or 5 times now. It's launched a bunch of different times in early access / open beta / closed beta, whatever you want to call it, alpha thing. And it didn't really have an official launch in any of those other markets because it didn't have enough hoopla, basically. But for some reason, they launch it over here in the West, and it kind of just works on us. And I feel like that's because maybe we just don't have anything else to play. Maybe it's because we're kind of at that like valley part of the market. We're not on the peak, we're at the valley. It's possible. Could be people just thought that it was something sort of similar to Black Desert Online, since they're already kind of numb to that whole sort of game. And so Bless Online seemed like a natural transition. But I mean, it was just bizarre. I was seeing MMO YouTubers, in fact, shill this game like crazy. And I was just like, how are you shilling this game? How can you sit here and say that, oh, you didn't know it was going to be this way, when we knew it had Unreal Engine 3 in the very beginning? We knew that they had other failed launches. So it's just like, it's good to see that like such a poor product isn't going to then become successful in a sense. But I don't like to see how many people got kind of caught up in it. That kind of scares me. Like, we can't keep supporting these types of business practices. All right. So speaking of games turned into ports and Western relaunches, we have the recent news, as it's taking ages to load here, that Lost Ark is potentially upgrading to Unreal Engine 4. There's not a whole lot of other shit mentioned here, because apparently this comes from something that was translated. So I'm not really going to be able to show you guys that. But they're trying to go for sort of like the same thing that NCSoft is doing with Blade and Soul. Blade and Soul is currently being ported from Unreal 3 to Unreal 4. And yeah, so it says right here, like similar to what NCSoft is now doing with Blade and Soul. This is more of a rumor, apparently, though, based on the job posting. Damn, people need to tell you that it's a okay, it does say a rumor. Good job, buddy. Good job, Cinder Boy. Anyway, it's interesting to see, huh? I mean, this has some people worried from the perspective that how long is it going to take to port now from Unreal 3 to Unreal 4? But at this point, I mean, why wouldn't we want it to port to Unreal 4? If they're going to bring it to the West, we want them to bring it into West in best format, basically, in my opinion. And I know that people are like, shut up, dude, we want to play it now. I get that. I was an MMO fan. I get that, where you're just like, screw it, launch it anyway. Like, you don't even care. You just want to play the damn game. But we don't want them to launch it and then actually not want to rework it because it's actually working. I mean, you guys get my drift here. So not a whole lot of other information about that, but figured I'd cover a little bit about it. Okay, so apparently I have some information for everybody. This is some very, very, very important information. Turns out my death of a game on SWTOR was completely wrong, and the game is alive and well. They've announced Onslaught, the newest expansion coming to Star Wars: The Old Republic. Coming September 2019, which is a total of 5 months from now. And free to all subscribers. Heck yeah, let's do it. A classic from the Old Republic. You get the ability to go to Onderon. Nice. Then you get to go to Mech Shaw. Oh, you get to go back to Corellia. Okay. Ooh. Oh, you get to go to Duxon. That's pretty cool. The Spoils of War. What huh? Play your way. For the first time, we are offering true depth and choice with exciting new items. Uh-oh. I don't like the sound of that, guys. Exciting new items tells me one thing.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Loot boxes. They're definitely going to make some money off of that. Some new special kind of gear slot. Doesn't that sound familiar? Star Trek Online. And then all of a sudden, that's going to be the thing influenced, and you know, as your choice in the game. Yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical about that. I think that's some more cartel market kind of stuff. I think that's some more microtransactions. Because, frankly speaking, guys, this is one of the most poor expansions I've seen from the game so far. And it's a bit kind of ironic because that's my read of it and how I think most people who were there in the very beginning of the game would react now seeing the game. But I got like emails and tweets and comments posting this as almost like a I gotcha. Like everyone was saying, hey, look, the game's not dying. Check it out. And they're showing me this as the expansion. And I'm just sort of like, they didn't even give you guys like a half-assed trailer. Like they didn't even give you guys a barely an in-game trailer. Like there's no blur trailer here. There's no super, you know, detailed, insanely. I mean, let's go look up one of those. Shit, I mean, they're amazing. The cinematics in SWTOR are probably like one of the best parts.
1,000 years.
Right? They're not even getting a cinematic. I mean, even this page. Wrong one. Where was that one? Wrong page, guys. That was classic WoW. Even the page itself looks like kind of like a low effort content post. Like a Compton Compton. Banging out here in Compton. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle. It looks like a content update, like a content patch, if that. And they're calling it just blatantly an expansion. And I'm just kind of bewildered that people were showing this to me as like, oh, look, an expansion, the game's alive and well. If that's how you read this, you are so far gone into like the echo chamber. Even if I tied like a 20 billion foot rope around you, I don't think I could pull you out of there. There's just no way you're getting out of that echo chamber. If you look at this and you think, wow, the future for SWTOR looks awesome, guys. There's not even a trailer. They didn't even release a trailer. There's not even an overview shown of like these planets or anything. Where's the narrative trailer? Where's like a narrative gameplay trailer? Where's the hook? Where's the art? These are just, I mean, here's art. But a lot of this stuff is just gameplay screenshots. Sorry, guys. If it sounds like I'm being pedantic here, it's just because I really want people to stop being fine with like the bare minimum. Because the more that we do that as MMO players, the more they're going to keep feeding us the same shit. And then how are we going to pay for it? Well, you guessed it. They're going to lock it behind a subscription fee, or they're also going to lock it behind a progression fee, aka you need loot boxes to look good, or you need loot boxes for this new special tactical item, which is, I'm going to assume, is going to be a focal point for their new push into microtransactions. If you want to wonder why I'm very like annoyed by this whole thing, I'm going to show you guys something that just really boils my blood. Let's see if I can find... So Casey Hudson, who's the GM of BioWare right now, last year made this quote: 2019 is to be the best year for SWTOR. And I feel like I'm the only person here in this case who, well, besides you guys watching, but I'm the only person here that I feel like is looking at this and thinking, okay, this is what they said, right? They said that it's going to be the best year, and then this is what I'm given, and I don't really know if this, you know, coincides with the belief of the best, you know? I don't know if this tells me that this is the best year for SWTOR going forward. But I will let you guys form your own conclusions. So, whatever your opinion is, we'll move on. Alrighty, so Albion Online, we've talked about it a bit. I made a video about it. It's now officially free to play. The developers had an AMA on Reddit recently, on the MMORPG Reddit, and they talked about different size updates that they put out, sort of how the game plays. And I figured, why don't we actually follow up on this and see kind of how the reception has been concerning the game since it went free to play. And I went ahead and loaded up the recent reviews here. And the recent reviews have been pretty mixed. The recent reviews here have been, it says about 45% of the users have rated the game positively. So you might be wondering, okay, so what has been the majority of the negative reception here? So if we just click here. By the way, I do this all the time whenever I'm looking up different games and covering different games. If you're wondering how I'm able to like also tackle a hardcore perspective but a casual perspective, it's because I try not to make it as much about my own opinion. I try and see what other people are also thinking, kind of what patterns are being represented. Because I always look for patterns. If you can see that people are also complaining about the similar, you know, sort of like problem, then you know that it is a problem indeed, right? Even if it's kind of like maybe a misrepresentation of a problem. So the majority of the negative criticism I've seen has been concerning the queue of players. This person references a 7,900 queue of players, so he uninstalled the game. This guy talked about being stuck in 5,000 and the 8,000s. Yeah, basically a whole lot of people at the moment seem to want to rage about the whole queue system in the game. And the only way that you can get past the queue system, as you would guess, is by spending money. And so people think that the game is not indeed free to play because it's enticing people to want to spend money right off the bat because you can't play the game really at all. Yeah, that's the majority of the negative criticism. Can't play the game, can't play the game, can't play the game. Well, I guess that's kind of like the downsides of making such a business model switch is they have to introduce some sort of boundary to keep people from just making endless amounts of free accounts. But at the same time, doing a system where you just incentivize people to spend money to even get past the queue, I don't know. Why don't you just create another server, right? Well, because they want to save costs. So it's just like, if anytime you want to save costs, it always comes down to, is the customer going to hold you accountable for it? For whatever thing that you're not getting them because you're not spending more money. If they're going to hold you accountable for it, and in this case, many people are holding them accountable, I mean, they're only getting 45% positive reviews, it might be worth doing something different. So we'll continue to follow the story about Albion Online's free-to-play launch and see how it unfolds from this point on. All right, so a fun story to cover here. We'll go over a real-life lobbyist being banned in EVE Online. Just delete the reviews. A real-life lobbyist was just permanently banned in EVE Online for corruption. The guy in particular denied any involvement, stating that he didn't, or no, he denied that he did any wrongdoing. He said that CCP Games wouldn't respond to his requests. And he even said that they were false allegations. Apparently, the original story, as explained here, and I'm sure if Card's in chat, he could probably spark note this. But apparently, it says right here that the so social engineering is actually legal in EVE Online for those who haven't played the game. What that means is that you theoretically can trick people. You can prove, you can kind of like, I guess you would say, be a real heist, be a real space pirate. If you can catch people off guard and steal their shit, it's kind of like assumed, well, you got tricked, you know? That's part of EVE Online. And the developers have been sort of strict and I guess you would say not enforcing anything. So they sort of let people kind of do what they want. It's a little bit more Wild Westy in certain ways. So apparently Card says that he thinks it's a typical abuse of power, that the CCP staff are just kind of pushing their weight here. And this might actually be one of the first times that I've seen a big ban concerning somebody essentially frauding people in EVE Online. Apparently he used information that he obtained through his job of working on the his in-game job of working on the Council of Stellar Management. That's a hilarious name, the CSM. Interesting. Yeah, he shared confidential information. I see. So basically, this is the equivalent for people following the story to insider trading, right? This is almost like insider trading in a way. I think that's pretty hilarious as a prospect. And really, I mean, only in EVE, right? Only in EVE Online. Exactly. Just another day in EVE. Yeah, I'll link the article in chat. All right, so the final point that I have, actually, that's the end of the MMOs on the Go segment. We talked about Classic WoW. I guess I could double back a little bit about Classic WoW before I get into the soapbox segment. If any of you are wanting to ask me a question, the call-in segment, I'm moving into the call-in segment. I have no more water, so my mouth is so dry and it's starting to stick. So it's hard to not stick my words together. We're moving into the call-in segment. If you'd like to ask me a question on Discord, you can join the podcast lobby. Zila, the podcast moderator, is currently in the podcast lobby awaiting your questions for me. If you'd like to ask me one in Discord, of course. But if you just would like to ask me one on Twitch, just go ahead and @ me or @ Zila in chat, and you can add us with your specific questions. It can be about anything we've talked about. It can be about anything in general. It can be general questions. As long as it's not against the rules, basically, I will answer the question. Another point I want to make before I collect some of these questions and start answering them is that in regards to Classic WoW, there isn't any plans right now for how launch is going to be handled from a guild perspective because we don't have any information about when launch is going to be. So as soon as we get information for that, and then also the Halo community, as soon as we get information for the Halo community, then I will start to announce more kind of like set in stone scheduling and how how we're going to approach things and who's going to do what and etc. etc. All right, what's the first question? All right, so Ramis asks me, you've played Halo games. How do you compare Halo multiplayer to Unreal Tournament games and Quake 3 Arena, or other classic PC multiplayer shooters of the early 2000s? So Quake is probably going to be a pretty easy comparison to make, just simply because it's sci-fi, it's space, movement is a big thing in both games. Fights are often very personal. Whenever you fight somebody, they almost always have a chance to fire back at you unless you just have like a ray gun or something like that. Point being, like, the fights are kind of close quarters. They're more personal. The maps aren't huge. While Halo is different than that in certain cases because it does have the propensity for big maps like Warsong Gold. Sidewinder. They've called it so many different names now. Sidewinder. What's the new name that they're calling the Halo map? As I remember it in Classic. Combat Evolved. Say. What are they calling it these days? They've called it so many different names now. Let's see. What's the original map name? You know my memory is bad. Okay, so it's Blood Gulch. That I was saying Warsong Gulch. Blood Gulch is how they called it in Halo 1. And then I think they ended up changing it already in Halo 2. Yeah, in Halo 2 they call it Coagulation. Yeah, Coagulation. And then they change it again in, I think, Halo 4. Was it? Was it Halo 4 that they changed it? Anyway, I can't remember off the top of my head. To further answer your question, anyway. A little bit sidetracked. I would say that Unreal Tournament is a pretty fair comparison. The only thing that's going to be different in Halo is that in Halo, depending on which version you play, of course, in Halo 1, the movement isn't really as nuanced as it is in Quake. And frankly, actually, you know what? I take that back. Movement in Halo is more free-forming. In Quake, I feel like movement's a little bit more restricting because you basically have to bunny hop in order to properly move around the map and also increase your velocity as much as you possibly can. And so like you have to you learn how to strafe properly while you're bunny hopping and that sort of thing. Like I just that's not really the same in Halo 1. Halo 1's more so about probably your positioning, more so about the way that you use the power weapons in the game and you know the map in and out. So it's similar to Quake in that respect. That Halo 1, in fact, power weapons wise, is probably very similar to Quake. The game is almost all based around power weapons. But then once you get to like Halo 2, there's a lot more glitches that sort of kind of mimic some of the mechanics that became mechanics really in Quake. Say, for example, like BXR is like where you can melee somebody and then quickly shoot them in the head if you have proper target aim, which is basically just having it in an angle. So there's certain glitches that increase the skill cap in Halo 2, and Halo 2 is about hit scan, so it's a lot faster paced than Halo 1 is. But then you have Halo 3, which is sort of a jump back to projectile-based games. The BR is projectile, it's no longer hit scan. Only certain guns are hit scan, and I can't really remember which ones are hit scan off the top of my head. Probably the sniper. Snipers would. I can't remember. Well, actually, no. The Covenant sniper is not a hit scan weapon, that's for sure, because it can get ricocheted off of a shield. I remember that. I used to test that all the time for some reason. But yeah, I guess Unreal Tournament's pretty close. The main differences I would say in regards to Halo in general is well, actually, let's talk about the similarities. The similarities would be the power weapon focus. You have shields. You can also get over shields and power-ups in the game. So it's about knowing the map properly. It's about timers. If you can know the timers properly, you know when to go get power weapons. You lock down power weapons, you can lock down certain corridors that are dominant. That's all very similar, right? Just in competitive shooters in general. Where the games differ are going to be that in Halo, the most powerful weapon in the game is basically the weapon that can consistently aim the best. And so in that case, it ends up being the BR, sometimes the DMR depending on the game, the pistol depending on the game, and etc. Those are like the most common weapons. You don't use assault rifles, you don't use shotguns unless you're kind of camping down a particular area. The weapons are more so long form in more competitive Halo environments, so people are going to be shooting each other. I mean, I see it all the time. When I play Halo Online, allegedly play Halo Online, whenever I play the game online, people don't know this in Halo 3, but I'm literally sniping them from across the map with the BR, because you can snipe people. Like it's a feature in the game. If you know how the projectile aim properly, how to shoot your shots, you can just snipe people from across the map. So the game, especially on PC, that's to the next level. So it actually, in many ways, is more ranged based than maybe it seems like in more casual versions of Halo or kind of like console versions. It's going to be more about having the proper maps to play on. but playing like really big maps with BRs is a nightmare on PC because like you're just gonna get shot so unbelievably fast. And I realize Unreal has no frame of reference for big maps, but there's big maps in Halo, and there's also up to 32 players depending on the kind of map. So you can have big 16 versus 16 battles. So yeah, I would say those are probably like the biggest differences. Strafing is also important in both games. That's another similarity. I guess another difference would be that in Halo, the game is a lot more team-centric than Quake. Quake has a lot more focus on 1v1, and I think that that's not really popular in Halo. In fact, the only people who 1v1 are edgelords like me who challenge people to 1v1s. So, yeah, it's more likely that you're going to play a 4v4 game type at the very minimum in Halo as well. Oh, really? Onslaught mode? And never even heard of those. Oh, that's in 2K4. Drowercorn says, if you join the guild, do you have to join a team? I'd like to be a part of the community, but I don't think I can commit to PvP or raiding at this point. No, for sure not. You don't have to. You don't have to do that at all. In fact, that's why I made it that way. Don't get me wrong, you can come along in PvP whenever you're available. It just means that you're not going to get priority to be placed into a group that specifically wants to show up in PvP. Because that's unfair to people. To like make them relying on you and then you not really like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that's why I made it to where you don't have to apply. You can just show up and come to any activity. It just means you're not going to get access to like the group 1, group 2, group 3 kind of thing. You're going to probably be in a fill group, which is, I mean, still at the end of the day, perfectly fine. You're still going to get communication. You're still going to get the benefits of contributing and being in a guild and having a community and all of that stuff. But obviously, you're not going to get all of the rewards for doing that if you don't put in the work, per se. You need to understand line of sight and placement on PC because people's aim with the mouse is way better. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to kind of wrap up what I was saying, really, is long-range fights on PC, I can notice are a bigger thing because people are obviously much better with aiming. So unlike in previous Halo games and really just in console in general, you can snipe people in Halo 3 on console, don't get me wrong, with the BR. It's way easier on the PC. I was just melting people. I mean, I can shoot them from so far away and get headshots on them. So the game's going to be different on PC for sure. And people are going to have to get used to that. You've mentioned you've played Baldur's Gate games, though not on release. How do you compare their BioWare magic to later games? Also, do you think that more RPGs should be low-level adventures like the first Baldur's Gate? So funny enough, like when I played Baldur's Gate, I can't even remember when it was. It might have been like right after it came out. But I played the Baldur's Gate 2 that came out on the Xbox first. And then I didn't until later on, until Neverwinter Nights, I started playing that on the PC, go back and try and play Baldur's Gate in its original form. But the funny thing is that Neverwinter Nights had a module that basically redid Baldur's Gate. So I was like, play Baldur's Gate or play my favorite game, Neverwinter, at the time, and its rendition of it. And I was like, I'll just play that one instead. So I played the Neverwinter Nights 1 rendition of the Icewind Dale game. Or should I say BioWare game. And anyway, that was just funny. But that's how I ended up playing it. How I would say it would stack up to current games, I mean, I think it's kind of slow in certain ways. The movement is a little bit outdated, of course, just in the same way that I feel about Arcanum, which has similar problems with movement. If you're going to say like how does it compare magic wise, like an intangible kind of art aspect to it, I think those games really do stand the test of time. I mean, I just kind of spoiled it that I love Neverwinter Nights and Neverwinter Nights 1 and 2. I really like those games. And I went back and played them even in retrospect, and I still think that they're very quality games. I think that good quality games, from an artistic perspective, they don't really lose their value, you know? Like, they can retain that value. And I think that that was definitely... Baldur's Gate is a series that although just like with Planescape Torment, it's not going to get as much love as it maybe should get because it's so narrative focused in an old school style game with kind of like rudimentary combat. That's going to be off-putting for the majority of people. But it's just a shame to think that the Baldur's Gate world or mythos is not really going to be expanded anymore. Probably not, at least at this point. And even if they did, do we trust that they would even do it any better, I should say? I don't know. It's kind of hard to top such a legendary game, but also with the recent BioWare products, I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen. Yeah, sorry, I was thinking Icewind Dale from Black Isle. It's easy to get Black Isle and also BioWare confused based on the types of games that they made. To answer the second part of your question, as if RPG should be more about low-level adventuring, like in the first Baldur's Gate, completely agree. That's one thing I really like about Pathfinder Kingmaker Chronicles, and I like about other style games like that, like even Divinity in some cases. I like when games don't really focus on you being the super chosen one hero as much. Neverwinter Nights 1 in certain areas did that, but more so Neverwinter Nights 2 in the very beginning of the game, the prologue did a really good job of that, of making you just an average Joe who just kind of like stumbled into all of this shit, and you're just like, what the hell's going on? Like, I guess I should do something, but like not necessarily being you were chosen by the Force, or you know, you're a super special Force baby, Force Jesus. Like, I think people are kind of getting tired of that because it's been done so many times that people are at this point sort of like, can I just be like a scruffy nerf herder? Like, I mean, can I just be a scruffy nerf herder? I don't always want to be the hero. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility to be the hero all the time. And when everyone's the hero, are we really the hero? No, not everybody should be the hero. Sometimes we just want to be a moisture farmer, you know? Sometimes we just want to sell power converters. We have more humble aspirations, if you will. That's what I like about the Bard games as well, by the way. That's how you feel about Donkey Kong Country games on the SNES, the good old SNESer. Have you talked about the latest news from Ion Has Costas, the lead developer in WoW, and how they will approach WoW from now on? I think I said it before in chat, but I'm not really interested in continuing to follow modern WoW at the moment. I just think that they're so far off base, and frankly, after playing BFA, I feel like I saw the curtains. Like, I don't really see a big future for the game because at this point, they're so incredibly reliant on developer-made content. Unless they retread old ground, which they're already doing, they don't really have a whole lot of steps forward, because if they make other big errors, this isn't a scenario that they can just live forever, guys. Like, if they make other big mistakes, this could be the end of modern WoW. And I'm not going to sit here and be like a doomsayer and be like, what's going to happen tomorrow and next week and next year? You know, we obviously have no idea how slow or how long this process would take. But it's easy to assume that, you know, modern WoW is trying to make certain choices and remove certain things that they introduce themselves. But I just feel like at this point, it's just Band-Aid fixes. And what I mean by that is that, you know, if I have a giant gash in my boat, you know, a giant hole in my boat, I can maybe put a piece of like paper over it and maybe it stops a little bit of water, right? But it quickly kind of just disintegrates. Maybe I put a bunch of paper. Maybe I put a little bit of sand. Maybe I put something that can just block it on a minor level, like a low quality wood. It works for a little bit, but then as soon as it goes bad, that hole bursts even worse, right? And now it's like, why didn't I just properly fix it when I could? Well, obviously hindsight's 2020, and in the case of WoW, they didn't, because of they went for a more like money-centric approach, which is kind of more casual, more widespread appeal to a broader audience, which worked, by the way. But we don't know if maybe it worked only in the short term, and it's not really working in the long term. My hypothesis, or I should say my kind of theory on this all, is that I think that that worked in the short term. But I think that now people are kind of like, they've had enough fast food. they've eaten enough candy. They're kind of like, yo, man, I want that steak, dude. Like, does anybody here cook? Anybody here actually, like, you know, roast meat ever? Or maybe just, like, make a soup or something, like a bean soup? Doesn't it take a long time sometimes to prep some of these really amazing tasting things? Now, imagine you, instead of having to do that, you can just put something in the microwave and just eat it really quickly. Well, we call that instant ramen, right? So now you're just eating instant ramen for years and years and years. Sure, it's cool and nice and it's fun and you get it quick. But I mean, after a while, you're kind of like, all right, I can only try so many instant ramen flavors. I kind of want like a steak. I kind of want to make a big soup. I kind of want to make a gumbo. I kind of want to make like card set or risotto. Like, so if you want to make something good, you got to put time and preparation and effort into trying to achieve that goal. And that's kind of how the analogy that I think fits the MMO market right now, especially in regards to modern versus classic WoW, is people are sort of like, okay, at this point, man, I'm tired of the fast food, man. Give me the gumbo. Give me the, for Lions, give me the, give me like a mole enchiladas. Give me the mole chicken. Give me the guisado. Give me the menudo. Give me the tamales. Give me the stuff that takes a long ass time to... Dude, tamales take ages to make, man. And they're so good. And menudo takes a long time to make too. And so what I'm trying to stress, guys, is that the best things take time, right? And so the problem is that as they edged closer and closer to a more readily available format, they essentially cheapened their own product. A product that I believe was a very good product, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say that modern WoW has no redeemable qualities. It certainly has some redeemable qualities. But if you just look from patch note to patch note, if you don't believe me, if you think I'm fear-mongering, go look from patch note to patch note from Classic WoW to Wrath of the Lich King. And look at how drastic the game just changed in such a short amount of time. In like 2 years, the game just changed so much. And so that's really what's got people interested in Classic WoW, right? Is they want to get back to eating steak dinners. They want to get back to eating their own sushi. They want to get back to eating the gumbo. The meals that take a long time, but when you finish them, that raid, that Nax raid, that Onyxia raid, that Molten Core, maybe you did a PvP raid on Stormwind, you feel like, good, man. Yeah, it took us some time to set that up, but that was worth it, dude. Because it's the anticipation of the event, really, that psychologically speaking, we as humans resonate with the most, right? That's been proven. It's not the gift or the particular item itself. It's the shared experience, right? It's the memory, the good time. That's what's missing right now. That's what's going to hopefully be at least somewhat rectified, because if Classic WoW can at least show people that it's possible to make that work again, my philosophy here is that I'm not going to ride the Classic WoW, train until the wheels fall off. I'll be the first to say that. After I get my Grand Marshal rank, I don't know what the future of the game is after that point. But I think that even though I might not be willing to stay and play Classic forever, I think that it can be a positive thing in the world of MMO, just across the board, because people are going to see that this can work. Maybe we can start doing something like this again. And if that can at least convince one major developer, one, good project, then that's a victory in my eyes. That was my rant, my soapbox moment, really. I should have put the soapbox up there, but that's kind of how I see it all. All right, another question. A non-WoW question. Do you think a sandbox MMO based on the 1800s America could have potential? I think it could allow for a mix of tech levels and playstyles. There could be everything from exploring and gathering on the frontier to running a factory in the city. Yeah, I think New World sort of did that, Ludens, as Ludens points out. But I think, if I pick up on what you're saying here, you're saying more so in like an immersive sim sort of way. And frankly speaking, I think that that's very possible. It actually would be very interesting to have a game that has a whole war aspect to it and a combat aspect, but it also has an infrastructure and a support and an intel and a manufacturing aspect to it. And people could actually play those games. You might ask, well, who would want to be a factory, run a factory? Well, People play like Farm Simulator. People play like Truck Driving Simulator, Goat Simulator. There's like a million simulators that do pretty good numbers. So I'm sure people actually would be willing to play games like that. They felt like they could actually involve themselves into the world. I mean, you look at games like mods like Altus Life for Arma, and you have these kind of like real life sim games that do pretty well. You know, people like those games. They resonate really well. So I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more kind of those style of games, except for the fact that they're probably very expensive and very difficult to make. The problem is that the game is so old that it will eventually die under its own weight. The people playing it have such expectations at this point that they can't really make a new game out of it anymore without shifting on their established audience. Yeah, I honestly, I think that's a really good point, Ulysses. I've had this weird vibe about WoW recently, especially following this whole classic debacle, and it's just like you know, sort of wading through all the shit, but seeing sort of perspectives of like how modern WoW is looking right now. And it really is like, I think people aren't as worried as they should be, because it's sort of like at this point, you know, I talked about this in Discord the other day, ranted about it, I should say. If the next expansion doesn't really do well for modern WoW, I mean, the game's going to just slowly fade away. I don't really think that's the case. I think it's going to have a pretty massive fall, and it almost has to because of the sheer size of the game. Because they're so focused on developer-made content, they're going to have a big fall. And maybe that fall can be, in this case, kind of mitigated because of Classic WoW, so the numbers won't really reflect that. And maybe that's hopefully what they were banking on. But the question I have for you guys today, and this will be a good question to end it on if I have no more questions in chat, it would be, what happens after Classic WoW? What I mean after is like after enough people have done Naxxramas, after a 2-3 year period, however many years you think, maybe let's say 2 years of Classic. What's going to happen after that? Is it going to stay Classic? Are they going to release a new expansion? Are they going to keep releasing new patches? Are they going to release new content in the style of Classic WoW? What are they going to do? Because if they don't do anything, then it's just slowly going to die, because they're not adding anything new to it. And it's just basically living on the strength of its original vision, which is a good one. It's a successful one, but it's one that still also had problems, right? They did need to change things. I mean, MMOs always need to be amended and changed and kind of fixed in little ways, even if it's just small tweaks. So it's sort of like my question really to people is, what happens after that 2 years? Oh, like that's why I can't see myself playing after I reach the level of like the progression that I want to hit, because it's like after that point, sure, I can make another character, sure, I can play the other faction, but there's no more new content, and the game is based on developer made content. Now, if you want to tell me they were like, hey, WoW Classic, we're not going to give you guys any new content, but we will give you guys some new sandbox tools. Well, I mean, I think that would be pretty cool. But again, I'm also part of the crowd who doesn't believe that we need to keep WoW Classic classic in order for it to be enjoyable. In fact, I think, why don't we have a WoW Classic that stays classic, but why don't we also come up with another WoW Classic that's actually just new WoW, but you know, not manufactured, but developed in the fashion of Classic WoW. I mean, you can still have your loyalists not get angry because they don't want any changes or any significant changes, while also maybe still continuing to keep WoW alive. Or maybe, as I've speculated and many other have speculated, maybe they pivot to another MMO. I have heard some reasoning of people kind of postulating that maybe they would just not do another MMO because it's expensive and the market and etc. And I'm basing this off of my experience in business and you know, watching a lot of other business and studying a lot, and it just feels like it's very rare that a corporation is going to give up a massive market share of something if they don't have to. Like, sure, you might say, well, maybe they don't want to spend more money, but spending the money to dominate market share is always worth it. I mean, that's what corporations are seeking to do. They want to dominate the market share. So if they just abandon the MMO space, it's going to be a massive void in their company. I don't really see them doing that. It seems like it'd be more kind of like problematic than it would be helpful to do that. So anyway, that's kind of my opinion on it. Hazakostas Ludens gave me a quote here. Mixed, obviously. We're incredibly happy with the world, storytelling, our raid, and dungeon content. PvP content like War Mode and actually PvP overall, having a robust reward system associated with it. We're seeing more rated PvP participation than at any point in Legion. And that is a scene that we want to continue to make healthier, but in a good place. Yeah. I don't know. Sorry if I sound so off-putting about classic WoW, or sorry, modern WoW. I don't mean to sound like classic WoW best, modern WoW bad. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that, but I just don't want to retread over previously treaded over ground. Have I watched the video Unruining the MMO by Mr. B-Tongue? Yes, I did, Sacriletius. In fact, I watched it the same day that you sent it to me. You know, I think that he makes a really good point. I mean, clearly, there was a particular point that was raised by Preach as well that kind of made me think about that video as well, where he said that past a certain point, when you have content, right, in a game, and you change the way that the community interacts with each other, it also changes the way that the content is played. Because when you go from having to show up to a dungeon portal and actually find people to join your group to just being able to do it from the safety of your own city, it has a much bigger effect than people realize at the time, of course. And so when you look at it in retrospect, you're kind of like, and by the way, sorry, let me pull this video up, because there's no context here, so I'm not sure if everybody remembers. I can spell. I think it was like Unruining. There it goes. Unruining the MMO.
MMO, the players are part of the game. You want to keep them coming back, and the best way to keep them coming back is one we've been playing.
Okay, this is the most important part of the video.
It was all emergent. What started as an elaborate proxy war became an elaborate direct war on a mass sandbox.
Okay, so the main points that he outlines here, we can just go over it quickly. We've got a little bit of time. 18 more minutes until I will cut off the podcast, by the way. So just letting everybody know, including Zila and Card. So 18 more minutes to ask me questions, guys. So I'll go over this a little bit, but he talks about something I've talked about a lot too, which is funny because you know, obviously you start to notice a lot of the same patterns when you play the same games and you go through a lot of the same experiences as this guy seemed to have gone through. Theme park games, developer-made content. Sandbox game, player-made content. The problem is that when you rely so much on developer-made content, you essentially design your game to be completely reliant on how many players are playing the game in order to afford the next kind of developer-made content. Emergent gameplay, as he explains in here and uses EVE as an example, is all about creating the tools to give players the ability to create content that won't then make it to where the game just dies out after a certain point. In fact, this is completely related to the topic we just mentioned about WoW and kind of how classic WoW after 2 years, what's going to happen to it, because it's like, okay, you have vanilla, but vanilla is still theme park at the end of the day. Sure, it's more sandbox-like than the majority of, you know, modern WoW is and has been for some time now, for a number of years, but it still is a developer-made content, you know, MMO. It does have some sandbox features, but they're not nearly as great as Star Wars Galaxies. And so that is kind of like my worry, is like looking ahead, is like, what's the future of it? And I don't know, I guess we'll see. But yeah, thanks for linking this video. And for those who haven't seen this one, I'll link it in chat. It's some of the similar stuff that I've talked about in my comparison video between sandbox and theme park MMOs, but he talks about it more from a historical perspective and uses the Michael Jordan analogy of kind of like when it's a funny analogy because it's like when an MMO is so damn good, it makes everything else become kind of not so good by comparison. And that's sort of what happened, right? Everything started copying off of the formula without actually realizing that there was a lot of nuance there and a lot of systems that were put into place in order to make the game, you know, so community focused. Are you hyped for Subverse, the future game of the year 2019? What is this game? Subverse? Oh, this looks like some kind of porn game. I see some girl with like big tits on the screen, so I'm gonna assume that's probably
MMO,
what it is. Call it old school WoW. That's a good one. That's a good one. They're using participation as their main key performance indicator again. I hate that shit. Yeah. It's like, you get a reward. Participation trophies. Congrats. Woohoo. We're at war, guys. Like, shouldn't we be killing each other like all over the place and not just whenever it's conveniently, you know, available to press war mode? But that's just my opinion, I guess. Of course, sandbox games have a problem of their own because oftentimes most developers who've created sandboxes didn't have the resources to create enough content. The thing is that it's better to build your game as a sandbox first than as a theme park, because if you build it as a sandbox first, you can always easily involve theme park features. For example, instance content, maybe like particular kinds of storylines, like structured storylines and raids and battlegrounds and things like that. Like, you can add that while also having a certain level of care to it. But the problem is that if you start as a theme park MMO, in my opinion, it basically closes off your options of being a sandbox game, because unless you add in new mechanics, which is much more difficult to do than just adding in new content, then you're not going to have a sandbox type of game. Like, I feel like it makes more sense to start as a sandbox and then aggressively introduce content as soon as you can, you know, because your game still needs content. It's bullshit when people say, in the sandbox game, the content is just limitless. And basically what Ludens was saying earlier is that Star Wars Galaxies was not really intended to be a sandbox game. They launched it unfinished as hell. That kind of happened on accident. They discovered this brilliant genre on accident, and they didn't have enough content to give you content to do in the game. So that came kind of later on. It was almost like an accidental genius. And so I think of it as like, you don't want to be that extreme where you're just like, hey, you just spawn in Mos Eisley and go kill Womp Rats. There you go. Create your own story. Woohoo. I think that's a little bit kind of silly, right? Because lots of people quit. So clearly that kind of style has its disadvantages. At the same time, I don't want to spawn and then be like, okay, next objective. I feel like I'm being herded around, which is how I feel in the majority of games these days, including Elder Scrolls Online, ever so much so, despite the feeling that it's open. It's not really open, I guess. All right, it looks like I've answered the majority of the questions here. So I want to thank everybody for stopping by today and watching the podcast. I also want to thank those who have been here since the very beginning of the game. Or, sorry, I was reading what Pin Zero said. It does help to have some degree of direction in a game. I totally agree. WoW really kind of started that quest hand-holding gameplay, though. It did, but the thing is that it wasn't the same way. And once you play, if you do play WoW Classic, you'll learn that the hard way. Just like in Elder Scrolls Morrowind, you actually have to read the quest dialogue. You have to read the actual, like, text of a quest in order to figure out what to do, unless you just want to download an add-on, kind of like go from objective to next objective. And if that's how you want to play the game, then, you know, I'm not going to hold that against you. At the same time, it seems like a waste to do it that way, because it's like, why go back to the source and want to experience how things were at one point just only to play it like you'd play it in a modern day? And sometimes the quest tells you to ask people. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Star Wars Galaxies had the Rebel versus Imperial War escalation that forced PvP engagements on a larger scale, but it was still mostly player-driven. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as you know, WoW is much the same way, except that it had a lot more developer-made content, and so, in my opinion, that's why it blew SWTOR, SWG out of the water. It just blew it out of the water. It was just a level of polish that Star Wars can't compete with, you know? Galaxies didn't have that kind of budget, didn't have that level of polish, launched already unfinished. WoW, when it launched, man, that shit was polished, dude. It was already polished. And I remember even playing the trial back then. It was just a polished game, and it felt like that. And I was a Star Wars Galaxies fanboy, and I couldn't deny it, you know? Oh man, this quest has dialogue to read. Yeah, that's gonna be funny to watch. But that's the cool thing about having a guild is we can kind of all experiencing it, or we can all experience it together. Anyway, I think it's a good time to stop the podcast. We've been going for about 2 hours and some change. Thank you everybody for asking a question. This is the end of the call-in segment and the end of the podcast. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for stopping by to watch episode 29 of the podcast. This will be, of course, uploaded on SoundCloud and then uploaded on YouTube as it is usually. Remember, next week's podcast on Monday starts at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is actually 10 minutes prior from now. So if we go back 10 minutes from whatever your clock is right now, that's what time the podcast is going to start. It's going to be a special podcast with none other than Chris Avellone, one of my favorite developers, designers, and writers, and also just, you know, frankly speaking, a legendary creator of RPGs. So it should be fun. If you guys have any questions you'd like me to ask him that and you know, you'd like for me to present to him, please at me in chat, or you can at Zila as well. And he will save those in the podcast maintenance channel, which you guys can't see. It's secret. And just send those questions whenever. If you'd like to send those questions, just make sure to at Zila likes. I can't see what the second part of his name is, but he's the purple guy named Podcast Aid in Discord. If you look at the top right little sidebar, you'll see him. Just add him with your questions. He'll save them for you guys. And then I will pick whatever the best questions are, if I end up picking any of them at all, because I have some good questions of my own to ask him. So it should be fun. Look forward to that. Some progress on the Patreon video. That one is currently being worked on right now by Tom. I just sent him one of the final pickups that I had to do. So that one is really, you know, should be coming out any day. And I know I've been saying that, but I really mean that now. We've gotten some of the roadblocks out of the way. I've already looked at some of the test footage myself. It looks pretty damn good. And you know what? Before I leave you guys today, I'll show you a small little teaser. A small little teaser. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm trying to. Justin. Okay, this is it. That's the only teaser you're gonna get. That was me at PAX Unplugged. And there's my shirt on. There's my lav mic. I was laved up, of course, doing some interviews and stuff. Now let me I'm not going to show you guys any of the footage of me in costume. You're going to have to watch the video for that. Let's see if I can find some other another tease shot I'll show you guys. Here was me talking to a developer who works on the Mistborn series board games, tabletop games. He actually gave me that game there on the table for free. That was awesome. So shout out to Mistborn House War, the name of the game. And shout out to, let me pull up their company name. It's made by the official like team of the writer, Brandon Sanderson, but it's actually published by Crafty Games. There you go. So it's published by Crafty Games. So that's another spoiler shot I'll show you guys, and maybe one more. All right, that's all y'all are gonna get. That's all y'all are gonna get. Actually, no wait. All right, that's it. That's all you're getting. Anyway, so thank you for being patient, because I know I've been talking about that for a minute. As for the next death of a game, that's going to be on Hawken. It was already kind of figured out. I will make an official announcement probably today or tomorrow about that. And then that death of a game should be out by this week and coming up. So look for that one by Monday, the latest of next week. That should be a good one. It should be a shorter one. Hawken had a pretty unfortunate story that I hope that you guys will enjoy. So that's it, everybody. That's all I have, and I can't wait to show you guys what we have planned for the channel, but also show you guys what next content we have planned. And I look forward to playing WoW with you guys, and also covering more MMOs and covering more Death of the games. So yeah, thank you for stopping by again. I will see you guys later. See you later, detectives.